Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is ask. Let's take a look at some of the definitions or ways that we use this verb. The first way you might hear ask used is to mean to say something in order to obtain an answer or some information. I picked this verb for today because many people are headed back to school this week. And this verb, ask, is something that is frequently done in class. Teachers will ask their students questions in order to see if they are understanding material or maybe if they've read what's been assigned. But students will also ask teachers so that they can obtain new information. A second way you might hear the verb ask used is to mean to request permission to do something. In this case, I think it's very common for us to think about children asking their parents, can I have a friend over? Can I go outside? Can I play more video games, etc. Right? They are requesting permission. A third way to use the verb ask is to mean to invite someone over to a place or invite them to a particular event. You should know that ask is a regular verb. To make the progressive tense, all you need to do is add ing to form asking. The past tense and participle forms of this verb are made by adding ed. Our base verb ask ends in an unvoiced K sound. So our past tense ending, our ed, is going to make a T sound. It should sound like this. Asked, asked. Okay. Now let's move on and practice some phrasal verbs with ask. You can probably tell from the note on the upper right side of the screen that there are many phrasal verbs that use ask. So we're going to focus on these today, and I'll point out some different verb tenses that are being used in each example sentence. The first one we're going to look at is to ask about. This phrasal verb essentially means to ask how someone is doing. And many times we are checking on someone's health. And that's how you might hear it being used. Let's look at an example. My college roommate always asks about my parents when we talk. Okay, this is an example of a simple present sentence. I'm describing the habit that a particular person has. And so in this case, the former college roommate is inquiring or asking how other people are doing. A second way you might hear a phrasal verb with ask is to ask around. This means to ask many people for help or information. Generally, what this implies is someone is going to continue to ask people for this information or for help until they find an answer or they find help. Let's look at another example. I'll ask around at work to see if anyone has extra tickets for the show this weekend. Okay, this phrasal verb is a contract. We have a contraction for will there. I'll ask around. This is simple future. Someone is expressing, maybe making a promise about what they're going to do in the future. So they are going to talk to different people at work until they find maybe some extra tickets. Another phrasal verb you might hear is ask back. This means to invite someone to return to a particular place. Let's look at an example sentence. Be a good guest or they won't ask you back. This is another simple future usage for ask back. So here someone might be making a prediction, right? If you are not a kind guest, they are not going to invite you to return. The next phrasal verb we'll look at is ask for. This can have a couple different meanings. One is to provoke or cause some sort of negative reaction. Let's look at the example sentence. You're asking for trouble by poking that stick through the dog's cage. Okay. Here, you're asking for is an example of the present progressive or the present continuous. So we're talking about something happening right now. And so maybe someone is trying to get a reaction from a dog that's not theirs. And because we don't know it, it's could get angry, right? That could be the negative reaction. So a second way to use ask for is to mean to request something. This could be a request for an object, a thing. It could be a request to do a particular action. It could be a request for money, etc. Let's look at an example of this. The teacher asks for students' homework at the beginning of each class. This is another simple present sentence. We're talking about the teacher's habit or his or her routine of asking students to turn in their homework. Let's continue looking at some more phrasal verbs. And the next four that we're going to look at are all separable, which means we are going to have an object come between the verb ask and then the preposition. So you'll see that in our example sentences, but let's start with ask in. This means that someone is inviting someone into one's home. An example of this could be, we haven't asked any neighbors in since the start of the pandemic. So hopefully you can see in this present perfect example, a negative present perfect example, that the asked is being separated from in by the object any neighbors. So this is essentially saying we haven't invited anyone to come into our house because, well, the pandemic, right? We don't want to make anyone sick. We don't want to be made sick by others. A second phrasal verb that is separable is ask of. This means that someone is requesting something of another person. An example of this could be, you're asking a lot of employees to work on both Saturday and Sunday. So again, we've got an object between our verb asking here and the preposition of. This is another present progressive sentence. And here, this a lot might be just a shortened way to say you're requesting a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of devotion from employees to make them work both Saturday and Sunday. The next phrasal verb we'll look at is ask out. This means to invite someone to go out on a date. An example of this might be, did you ask your spouse out first? So we're kind of wanting to know who did the inviting first, you or the person that you are now married to. This question is an example of the simple past tense. The last phrasal verb we're going to look at is ask over. This means to invite someone to one's home. An example of that might be, they have asked us over for a barbecue over Labor Day weekend. Here's another present perfect sentence. And again, you can see the separation between ask and over. Now, let's spend just a couple minutes looking at some words and phrases that are related to our verb ask. The first word we're going to look at is just the noun form of this word. So, exact same spelling, exact same pronunciation. When the word ask is used as a noun, it's referring to a request. It's very commonly used to talk about donations. An example of this might be, the charity is making a big ask from its supporters this month. So they might be asking people who've previously donated, maybe to commit to donating a certain amount each month or a larger amount over the course of the next year. The next thing we're going to look at is the phrase, if you ask me. You might hear people use this occasionally, and the purpose of this is to note that someone is expressing their own personal opinion. Okay, so not a rule, not a law, not a fact, but what they believe. So the way you might hear it is generally at the beginning of a sentence like this. If you ask me, you should be in bed by 9 p.m. on a school night. Right? Maybe this is something a parent is saying to a child. The last word we're going to look at today is the adjective unaskable. Right? So as you look at that word, I hope you're noticing there's the prefix un, right, for not. So this is going to be incorporated in our meaning here. It's not proper to be asked. Okay? An example of how you might hear this used: in my class, no question is unaskable, but some questions are unanswerable. So this might be something you hear a teacher or professor say during their first week because they want to encourage their students to ask questions. So they're saying, you can ask anything you want, but sometimes you might ask a question that I'm not able to answer. Thanks so much for watching today's video. I hope you have a great day.